Hi, good peeps. I hope all is well. I wanted to check in, see how everything's been going, also to share a message of encouragement. If this is your first time tuning in, I want to welcome you to the channel and to all my returning viewers and hopefully subscribers. I wanted to thank you for tuning in. On that note, if you've not subscribed to the channel, just want to encourage you to please do so and to please share. I would greatly appreciate it if you could help these messages of what I hope will be inspiration and encouragement and empowerment, that you will help them spread far and wide. So I've been thinking a lot lately about the notion of acceptance. And I don't want to say I'm going to do a series on acceptance. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I will say probably probably the majority of my adult life, I've had to embrace the process of acceptance in terms of changing life dynamics, certain situations, things that maybe I missed out on growing up, just my life journey. I've just been really in this lesson building season for the past couple of years around the notion of acceptance. And so I thought, hey, as I receive instructions and lessons, I want to impart that knowledge to someone else in the hopes that, the things that I've encountered, the things that I've gone through, the things that I've learned, or the lessons that I've learned will hopefully inspire you in some way. And so I may just do that. I may do a series just on different things that I've had to accept. But what I want to share today as it relates to acceptance is really accepting what a person is good at versus what they're not, their strengths versus limitations. So the other morning I was thinking about, how I wish I was more of, and you can fill in the blank, but that was the thought. Oh gosh, I wish I was better at this. I was more, in a particular way. And as I had that thought, it quickly reframed to me not really getting bogged down with what I wish I could be or how I wish I were different in certain ways, and really to focus on, how I already am and what I'm already good at and what I can do well. Now, I'm going to jump ahead of my message, but then I'm going to come back to this to say that there are definitely certain areas of our life that might not be our, the areas where we're strongest at. And sometimes those areas do require an assessment and some growth and development. But that's not what I'm really talking about in this instance. I'm really just talking about, in some instances, the ways in which you're hardwired, or the skills that you've developed along the way that, make you more skilled or gifted or talented in a certain area versus versus an area where you're not. And I often find this with kids, especially with my youngest daughter, how she always wanted to try and do things, and we would let her do it. We would encourage her, but to do certain activities, and she wanted to be this and she wanted to do that, and she just didn't really have a natural talent or ability for it. And even with practice, just really didn't get better at it. And so my attitude has always been, after we've tried this, let's find out what you are good at, something that you can do and be successful. But how often are there people who are looking at, I wish I could do this, rather than what it is that you're capable of doing. So anyway, that's how this whole notion, I'm calling it this first series in acceptance, came to be. And I wrote my notes. So there are those who are of the opinion that people should focus more on their strengths rather than their weaknesses. So the areas that they're good at versus those that they're not. And I don't necessarily disagree. The issue is that when you focus too much on the areas of your limitations, that causes discouragement because you focus on what you can't do, what you don't have. And let's be honest, that causes you to be discouraged about a number of things. And so it really goes into thinking about what are those things that you are good at? What do you have access to now? What do you have the ability to do now? And I believe that a healthy assessment of self involves an understanding of knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, your strengths and your limitations, what you're good at versus what you're not. And in no way am I suggesting that you gloss over those areas of weakness, but you're almost always powerless to be effective in these areas on your own. So I think about a few years ago, I took this assessment as a strengths finder, and it identifies your top strengths. I forget the total number, but the particular assessment that I took identified your top 5. And then you have these lower tiers of areas that they're not considered your dominant strengths, but they're kind of in that profile. And so they encourage you to focus on the areas that you're good at, because a lot of times people will focus on those limitations or those weaknesses and try to get better. But what they often find is they become more frustrated and more discouraged. And so the way that I guess, employed this practice in my life is that I know what I'm good at. When I say I've assessed myself, I have assessed myself. I have assessed. I know myself. The only being that knows me better than myself is God. And so I know what I'm good at, and I know what I can't do. And so in those areas where they've not been my areas of strength, and when I've had to work in different environments on different projects, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring in people that can help in those areas that are my weaknesses, so that I can focus on my strengths. Because when I'm focusing on the areas where I've been gifted, where I've been skilled, where I'm talented, then that's when I'm going to have the greatest output and the greatest effectiveness. I find that most people, when they identify a weakness or someone else points out that weakness within them, and I'm not talking about moral failings, let's be very clear. I'm not talking about moral failings, although I could make the case for that, but not in the context of this message. They almost are offended that they're not good at something. When you're not good at math, oh, I'm so offended, but you might not be good at math, and that's okay. And so what you have to do when you identify an area that you're not good at, you got to figure out some workarounds, right? Maybe you need to get a tutor. Maybe you need to take a different math, if you're in college or what the case may be. You've got to find the support systems to put in place that can help you in that area that is not your greatest strength. And you got to be okay. You've got to accept that there are just some areas that you're not going to be the best at. And that is simply okay. That's the diversity for us who are believers of the body, right? Because there are various members of the body, but all of them play a part. And even, we learn that when Paul is talking about the diversity of gifts within the body, he says that even in those weaker parts, those lesser parts, that the stronger parts are supposed to support or uphold those areas where it might be lesser. But you can't have the greater without the lesser without the greater. It all works together in tandem towards a specific end. So I just want to encourage you to accept. And I looked up this definition of you for acceptance. And acceptance, well, I did look up the definition for you of acceptance, and I don't know where the definition went. But, it's really just, excuse me, I'm going to find that really quick because I've had this all ready to go, and it went. Oh, wait. I'm going to find that for you real quick. Simple, it is as simple as the act of accepting something or someone. But then there was another part of the definition that I wanted to share. Give me a second. And that was willingness to tolerate a difficult or unpleasant situation. Now, as I continue talking about acceptance, this really, well, in my opinion, I don't feel like it was an unpleasant situation. Maybe it's unpleasant, maybe it's difficult when you're focusing on what those limitations are. But I'm definitely, as I go forward in sharing other areas of acceptance, I'm going to talk about some difficult and unpleasant situations that I've really had to accept. And acceptance it's a challenge, but it's a beautiful thing because in it comes peace. So when I think about the areas at this stage of my life that I'm not the best at, it's not because I'm a bad person. It's just, I'm just not very good at that. I can accept that about myself without feeling any type of disappointment or even type of discouragement because I know what I'm good at. And so my intent and my focus is to do those things that I'm good at well. And the areas where that might not be my best, then I have a support system or structure in place, whether it's people or mechanisms that I use to help me in those areas of limitation. And above all, we learn from Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:9 that God's grace is sufficient in our weaknesses. So God has already made provision. God has already given us the ability that despite our weaknesses, that we can continue on and move in the way that we need to at any given time. So I hope this message encouraged or inspired you in some way, empowered you. Please, please, please subscribe. And I hope to see you here as I continue to talk about acceptance. Be blessed, my friends. And until next time, take care.